We're going to today do this as a conversation between a son and a father. And I'm going to seat the son here, and the father will be standing here. Following their presentation, we'll have a question and answer period. The speaker's son will be helping, and his son is Ken Jones, who is a Greenville native, who graduated from Clemson in civil engineering with both a bachelor's and a master's degree, who had a career in structural engineering and teaching at Clemson, and lives in Anderson County now. Don't know how Greenville lost him. I'm hoping that this will entice him back. Captain Joe Jones is our honored guest, born in Dacusville in Pickens County. He was at Clemson in 1943 when he was called up, and after basic training and officer candidate school, got on a ship and went to France, landing in December of 1944. And after combat training, they put him through about 3 weeks of behind-the-lines combat training. He was assigned to the 71st Infantry Division, which was part of Patton's 3rd Army, which moved fast and fought hard. Was part of Patton's 3rd Army. The 71st Division saw combat over 800 miles of Europe that they covered in 59 days. So we're pleased to have these two men tell this incredible story.
I've known this man all my life. Longer than any other human being has. When it came to parents, I hit the jackpot. He's a great father, a mentor, a boss, a role model, a family man, and still a supervisor, a director, and if he keeps going, I'll let him be executor of my will. You can probably already tell he's hearing impaired, and I'm not making fun of that. If nothing else, I have a lot of sympathy for that. He's been to a lot of doctors, and this is about as good as it gets, even with the hearing aids that you see. So I brought a pad to write down some of the questions. It's easier to do that than it is to even speak to him here without yelling in Jay's microphones. Keep that in mind. He's no stranger to the Poinsett Club. He said he's been here probably 50 times at dances and stuff. He and my mom were avid dancers. They were in about 3 or 4 dance clubs here in Greenville when they lived in Greenville. And so they'd been here a lot. And I asked him one time where he learned to dance. Being from the country out in Dacusville, I knew they didn't have a lot of dances other than probably a little clogging or something. But he said he learned in the Army, mostly when he was in OCS at Fort Benning. They would go, when they had leave, they'd go off post and go to the clubs and go dancing. And when he was dancing here, if this had a crowd like this, he would dance with every woman in the place. Because Mom couldn't stick with him. But anyway, while he was at Benning, an interesting story, while he was at Benning, he was the officer of the day, and I'm not sure what the officer of the day does because I wasn't in the service, but when John Eisenhower reported to Fort Benning, and he and John got to be friends. They were both platoon leaders. And one time for a Christmas dance, really before they shipped out in January, they had a Christmas party and had a dance. And John's mother, Mamie, came to visit him. You can see where I'm going with this. Mamie didn't want to sit at the head table with all the cadre. She wanted to sit with John, and that's where they were sharing the table. And so, like you say, you could see it coming. I said, Pop, did you dance with Mamie Eisenhower? He said, yes, I did. So that may be how he got his good conduct medal. I don't know. But anyway, without wasting any more time talking to me, I'll let you talk to him or listen to him. I'm not sure what's going to come out. You can tell this isn't planned maybe quite like Bob thought, but as we talk back and forth and communicate, you can read the bio sketch and you heard about him. Something I think is very important is the war that he was involved in involved every American citizen. It wasn't just the ones that were overseas. It was the ones that were here that supported the ones overseas when we were making tanks and airplanes instead of cars and automobiles. When the food was cut short, you had ration gas and you had ration food because it was going overseas, wherever. So it involved everybody. So I'm very pleased to introduce one of the greatest generations, Joe Jones.
I heard a little bit of what he said, but I'm sure you can divide it by about 10 and it'd be right. He mentioned Mamie Eisenhower. I heard that. Well, back in my day, I'll go back and start over a little bit. I was at Clemson, a sophomore, when the attack happened, December 7th. Some of the boys got excited. Most parents paid no attention. Well, we're in ROTC. They said, stay in school. A lot of them were jumping out. They put us in the ASTP to stay in school. At the end of the junior year, I got home. My birthday's on June 13th. I got a letter in the mail. Report to Fort Jackson. The whole class, one time. Back then, we bummed around on the phone. I rode with my brother down to part of the way. He was taking his wife to Johnson. I got in the road and bummed. Then I got another ride. I bummed into Columbia. There's a place there said a bus to go out to Fort Jackson. Got on the bus. When we got out there, about 200 of my classmates reported in at one time. Well, we'd had more ROTC. They put a little corporal ahead of us. He'd march us around there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And our guys would say, CLEM, SOM. and we had a long column. He'd run to the back of the column, then front of the column and do the same thing. And he'd had about 6 months of service, and we'd all had about 4 years of service. Well, of course, we went through all the stuff there. We stayed there a while, and I had a stepmother. My dad had remarried, and she said, you better go down and see Joe, or maybe send him somewhere else. He said, oh, he comes home every weekend anyway. Don't worry about it. Well, it so happened they said, they gave us a pass on the weekend and said, now y'all, you can't use public transportation because all the buses are full. Well, we got on the side road in Columbia and caught a ride on the back of a truck, riding on the back of the truck, all strapped down with covers of the truck. Rode it all the way to Greenville. Got in Greenville and got across town on a trolley, and then bum out to Dacresville out in the country. People come into town to get free groceries, so a cold ride. So I got home, sitting there, and I had a private's uniform. I was sitting there in a chair, and nobody was at home. They usually go in there easy to get some groceries. So when I walked in, Daddy saw me and said, I told you he'd be home again. Well, anyway, we stayed there and went back to camp, caught a bus back to camp. We stayed there a while. Finally, they going to send us training, basic training. Normally, when you finish 3 years at Clemson, you go to summer camp for 6 weeks. You come back and finish your senior year, and then you're second lieutenant. They sent us to basic training. They counted us all. I got on training about 40, headed up north, ended up at Camp Croft, South Carolina. And of course, back then I was back home every weekend again. And we trained there, stayed there a while. And then they didn't have room for us. We have to go through OCS at Fort Benning. So they sent us back to Clemson on the ASCP. We took courses, marched around a while. Then they counted us off, and about 40 of us put us on a train and went out to OCS. OCS, I stayed there for about 17 weeks, training. I had graduation day, you know when? On my birthday, when I was 21st birthday, June the 13th. Everything happens on the 13th of June. What no? Anyway, from there they counted us off and sent me to 71st Division, which was located at Fort Benning at the time. I put in for the motor pool because I was going to ride, but I didn't get it. So they sent me there. Some of the others went up to Connecticut. Went up to various places all over the United States, some to Texas and a different training. Anyway, I stayed there a while. We trained for a while, and they'd take some of our people every now and then as replacements. And we'd send who are you going to send? You send the guy that gave you the most trouble. Anyway, we stayed there, and they decided we was going to go overseas. So we stayed there and got trained up. And we gave us a leave of about 2 weeks. I went home. My sister brought a lady home for me to meet, which ended up being my wife. And so I left there and went back. So in December, January, they put us on a train, sent us up to Camp Kilman, New Jersey. Stayed there in the snow for about a week. John Eisenhower was with me. He grabbed as much as I did about getting out in the snow in the morning. We stayed there about 6 to 8 days and whatnot. Carried put us on a train at night, sent us down, got on the plane. Ferry, went over a ship, got on the ship, and pulled out. We was on the ship 12 days in a big convoy, about 60-something. You could see ships as far as you could see. And of course, the U-boats were out there still at the time, and they put the troop ships in the middle. Then you had the other ships outside. Way outside, you have to have little torpedo butts going around. We were on it 12 days. There's a guy on bunk next to me. He got sick. He stayed in bed 12 days, sick. We were in the bow of the boat, and we'd see waves as half as big as this room. And the ship would go up like this and down. Your cookies would get in your thing. It was a nasty mess. You had the boys stacked 3 or 4 high, and an upchuck and missed the thing is all on the floor. Somebody cleaned up all the time. It gets you sick. The only place you could stand it was get up on top of the deck and watch the waves go up and down. Anyway, we stayed there for 12 days. Then we went, pulled into Southampton. At night, we crossed the channel. And when we crossed the channel, Bud came over. John Eisenhower, they sent for him. He went over and gave us a goodbye. They sent him up to Bradley's headquarters. So he disappeared from us. So then we went out to what they call Camp Old Gold. All replacement camps are named after Sycorates. We had Camp Old Gold and we trained there double time, all clothes on. Stayed there a while. Finally, God put us on a train, 48. We had 40 officers in one car. No place to lay down. I had some straw. I had a bucket over in the corner for a bathroom. We'd stop every now and then on a side track. We'd all jump out, relieve ourselves. Another train had priority on us. So about a day and a half on it, and we got over around Nancy, France, and Bitch, a little place called B-I-T-C-H. I think they call it Beach, but we call it Bitch. Anyway, we were there, and they decided to move us up to the front. Well, I had what I call a weapons platoon. I had 3 mortars, 6 mortars, and 2 light machine gun guns I was in charge of. Well, they came up to me and told me the 3 rifle companies were going to go back and guard Corps headquarters. And I was going to replace a whole company with my 30-something men up on top of a mountain. So a lieutenant led me up on the mountain. We found spots to put the machine guns. They already dug in. I had a place that was about 6 foot deep, covered with logs and everything. Been there all the time. They'd been there all winter. Had a little coal stove in there you could heat up at night. And you put machine guns out over here and one over here. And we'd have to go check the machine gun. And we had to know trademark. A lot of people get shot at night because of checking on things. Anyway, we stayed there a while. Finally, they pulled us out. I found out later by being slim, I was in reserve. That saved me. Well, they made the attack. The other regiments made an attack and broke through. Permasons, a little town called Permasons. I was on a truck, standing up, all of us moving up. And I looked over to the left, and here came a truck, and it was full of German people killed, stacked in there like cordwood. It kind of wakes you up. Then directly another truck came by, GIs stacked in there like cordwood, who got killed. Well, that wakes you up. Well, we got to Mason, and they were retreating. The road was full of German vehicles, upside down, cows, horses. They were retreating. See, most of their stuff was pulled by mules and horses. Ours was pulled by trucks. We could move faster than they could. Well, when they got stretched out there, our airplanes caught them, and they strewed through there. They were dead Germans, cows upside down with the legs up in the air, horses up in the air, and all the time. Well, that just kind of shows you kind of what it was. But I was in reserve behind that. Well, we moved through there. We finally got up to the Rhine River. Then the rest of the company joined me. So we're full company. I was drug in at the Rhine. Then they said, well, they put us on trucks then and sent us up across the Rhine. They had one of these put boats across it, and you go across it like that, your truck hit for about a half a mile across the Rhine River on the other side. Well, we kept moving along. If you look at this trail, we went about 600 miles. From there on, I did most walking along from. Of course, a division takes over, a 10-mile area a lot of time. And you got tanks attached to, you know. Well, our company commander, he was a guy that had come up through the ranks as a private, now he was company commander. And all my boys had been old. They'd been in the Army about 4 or 5 years down in Panama, come out. I had boys that couldn't read nor write. I used to have them write their letters home. I'd have to read the letters for them when they got them. And they'd write some crazy stuff. Anyway, went on, I can't tell you just where we came up to the concentration camp at Gunskirchen. Well, there's a little town there, right small. Over in Germany, it's a little town about every 1,000 yards sometime. Just 3 or 4 houses and whatnot. Well, what do you see when you see a place like that? About the first thing you see, what happens when the Germans find you within about a day or two of capturing them, they abandon the place. And they hadn't had any food for a day or two. They were starving. Well, first thing you see is probably a guy come out about half naked. They'd all broke through the camp and they'd struggled up the road towards you. they'd be laying along the side of the road. And also the odor, it's hard to believe how the odor, dead people, they're rotten. Some of them would have a coat on, some nothing, some naked, all kind of shapes and forms. And as you get closer to camp, you see more of them stacked here, stacked in there. When you get into the camp, they're a little shanty up there. They're all laying up in there, all dead, or a lot of them still moving. Some of them still okay. It's something you can't explain or explain how I look. You don't stay there long. I was with George Patton. Patton believes in moving on. He keep moving on. So after you stay a short time, you go through, but you get to see it. What happens later, a guy from Inman, who was a Clemson guy, he's in the company in another regiment. His company was given the job of cleaning up the camp. And he was a senior when I was a sophomore. I knew him, and I met him later when I got home. He worked in Spartanburg, and I saw him a time or two. But that didn't mean he dug it, but they had German prisoners take and pick them up and dig them and bury them properly. So that was his job. So that's what happened. Then we went on down toward Austria, and when in Austria, we ran through another one like that, another camp. Of course, mostly same thing there. So you move right on through. This little booklet here, I had it. They published it after it. It had pictures in the back. The guy had scanned them. And later on, I had a book that had the real thing. I think they're back there on the table, whatnot. But that was it. But I had like 3 mortars, and a captain. You run into trouble. The Germans was like be on a hill and they shoot at you. We'd stop and set up the mortars, and my captain would call for artillery fire. You can't stand that. And they'd take off and depart, and then we'd move forward. So I went through without a scratch the whole war, whatnot. By that, I think a lot of times, I have to tell you one little tale. We were down in Germany, and the Germans had shot at us from a hill over there about 1,000 yards. And we had a little one house there. I couldn't see anybody. Had a little rock wall, and I set the machine guns up behind the rock wall. Well, I had a call for nature. What are you going to do in the cold weather? Well, there's a barn out to the right front, and I told the sergeant, I'm going down and look in that window. If there's no Germans in there, I'm going to get in there. I went up and pulled myself up and looked, and I didn't see anybody. I was clear, so I jumped up and went in there, went to the bathroom, came back out. They were still shooting, bam, bam, bam. But a lot of times that's the way it was. You run. They were scattered. The Germans were scattered, and they didn't have much artillery at that time because, as I told you, they was pulled by horses and mules, and they couldn't move fast. And we had trucks and jeeps, and we could keep up, whatnot. At least, and since I've been back, I've read probably 12, 15, or 20 World War II books. And so that gives me an idea of what the whole system was and what happened. Well, at the end of the war, it wasn't over in Japan. Patton called us, we had a parade. Patton, it was raining. Patton came out, you know, he's known for his speeches. He came out, his aide had a rain brother over his head. Get that off of my. He grabbed a M1 rifle with a bayonet. He said, now guys, you're going to Japan, and I'm going to go with you. And we're going to take this rifle and we're going up there. And you know what? And we're going to twist it. He did, you know, he had if you read some of his speeches, he's pretty, a lot of bad words in it. whatnot. So we were doing Japanese tactics then. So ended up they dropped the atom bomb. That saved me, so I didn't have to go. They figured it'd take about a month for us to ride the ships to get to Japan. So that ended the war. So I was always for the atom bomb. A lot of people wasn't for the atom bomb. Of course, it saved about no telling how many 100,000, 200,000 soldiers if they had to go to Japan. Because they never did give up. You have to live up, whatnot. So, but I was what they call a little weapons platoon. And then later on, I just have to let you ask me questions or whatnot. Oh yeah, I want to say this. I'm kind of representing my class. Out of my class, see, I went through OCS in first group, and the rest of my class came later. A lot of them got sent at the Battle of the Bulge. You know what happened? The Battle of the Bulge. And a lot of them got killed. I had 52 killed of my class. We had 200 and something, 20% of them got killed. There's a monument at Clemson. If you go to Clemson, a little red light downstairs, where used to be the old post office, there's a little thing there from 44, a monument to those 52. And no telling how many of them got injured. I know several lost arms or legs and so forth. And same way for the other classes at Clemson. There's a lot of them got maimed and killed. But I've always said when I'm up, I'm not representing me, I'm representing the class of 44, which had 52 killed, and I think it's a list of them over on the desk over there. So that's about a short story that I can give. You can ask me questions or whatnot. Yes, I danced with many hours an hour.
I'm going to have to repeat. Captain, I'd like to ask one question. I'd like to ask, did the soldiers, before you went to the first concentration camp, did the soldiers have any idea of what they would find?
No, we didn't know. You just walk along, all of a sudden that shows up. This showed up. As I say, you see a straggler or two. When they got out of the camp, they began to hunt food and trying to get out. And they scattered up the hill about probably half a mile. You see one or two who was able to get that far, then some 3 over here, 2 down there, all the way down. And then you get into camp, and they be all laid up in the bed and dead, some of them alive. And later, we used to have reunions for our class, union, and 2 guys who were in the camp at that time survived and ended up in the United States and came and joined our group and spoke to us. And I thought I had the booklet on it, but I couldn't find it. But they came and joined us later. But there's a few of them survived, whatnot. At least I know 2 or 3 did.
Other questions? Jay, you had one?
What did the regular soldiers think about General Patton?
What did the regular soldiers think about General Patton?
Well, I wouldn't. They call him old blood and guts. Your blood and my guts. But I never did have a personal, close to him. The only time was when we had that parade there. I saw him, and he was. Of course, you can look on the internet and find his speeches he made, whatnot. Look up Patton. You can hear a lot of his speeches. But he was a good general. He meant to go ahead. He gonna get the job done one or the other. I've been back over there to Bastogne and all those places, and there's a big statue of him, about 12 foot high. Him with his binoculars, him surveying terror. His son had it built, and I've been back a couple of times, and I went through, and in Bastogne, I was out at the golf course one day, and one of my roommates there, I'd been to Bastogne. I said, "Would you want to go again?" No, he didn't want to have nothing to do with it. He was in the 7th Armored Division. He said, "When you go to Bastogne, if you see a tank there with a hole in it, that's one of ours." And sure enough, I had a picture of it when I was over there. But he didn't want to go back, so they kind of wanted saved us over there. You read the history. The 7th Armored Division, they pulled it in and got it stopped. There were more casualties in that place than there was on D-Day. D-Day had about 2,000 casualties, and there at the Bastogne thing, they had about 30,000 people we lost. It was a bad thing, more so than D-Day.
Questions? Any other questions?
I can clarify.
Yes. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify. Excuse me. I want to expound on a few things. One thing that I've found that he does is differentiate between the Nazis and the Germans. He stayed over there about a year after the war was over, helping with displaced people and also arresting some of the Nazis. But he points out several times that the Nazis were in charge. And at the time he was coming through particularly, there were a lot of old men and a lot of young boys and maybe women fighting for the German army. That if they didn't, the SS soldiers would shoot them. And another curious thing, he used to play tennis till he was about 93 or 94. And that's true. He had a friend he played tennis with regularly that had been a soldier in the German army that moved over here after the war. So I thought that was pretty unusual, but I wanted to clarify that. And also, that trench coat that's over there, he mentioned to me yesterday. I still hear stories.
Mine still. He's got a lot of my old clothes I wore during the war over there.
Yeah, he told me just yesterday that he wore that trench coat every day while he was there. And when they were marching or whatever, that whenever they stopped, that's where you'd sleep.
Let me tell him this. Our English professor at Clemson, I played tennis with him. He is in reserve. He was very particular. He wore coat and tie, always well neat. In fact, I saw where he called me yesterday. We played tennis together. One day he said, "Joe, how often did you change your underwear?" I thought about it. I said, "I don't remember changing it." Because at the end of the war, the day it's over, nobody shot his gun or nothing. We just stopped. And they called for rifle inspection. You always to keep you clean. After every time you clean your rifle. Well, I called my boys together without pants on. They're so nasty they took off their pants and had some black pots. They were out there washing their pants. And so I called them together and I had a picture of them lined up. We took a picture of them with their pants off, and I went down and checked their rifles, make sure they was clean after the war. But then another time, a guy walked up. He'd been in the infantry too, and Harmon was in the office. I told the guy, I said, "Harmon here asked me, said, let me ask you, how often did you change your underwear?" He said, "What?" I don't know how long we wore underwear. I remember one time they set up some tents. We was able to get a shower. They give you 1 minute to get in, get a shower, and get out, and you put your old clothes back on. It's a nasty situation if you're in the infantry. Don't get in the infantry. If you get in something else.
I told you didn't know what was going to come out.
Thank you for putting up with me.
He's still got a question.
He said, you said you did a lot of walking,
Well, that's the first. Did
Okay.
a lot of walking, but yet you had a mortar company.
but you had a mortar company.
Huh?
You did a lot of walking, but you had a mortar company. How did you carry your
Mortars?
your mortars? How
You
did
carried the
carry?
mortars. The mortars, see, you got one carries the mortar itself, one takes the legs, and one takes ammunition. About three of you, see. Same way with a machine gun. Machine gun, you got like two light machine guns. You got two assistant gunners who's got some ammunition with them. Then you got another guy who brings along ammunition. It's all figured out. Everything's three. Three regiment, three of this, three of that, three of that. You got two up and one back, all the way back. Deep defense.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I just have a comment. My mother was about 10, 12 years old in Germany.
His mother was 10 or 12 years old in Germany.
I hear that. I heard you.
She said that the best site for them
The mother in Germany, who was 10 or 12, said the best sight, the best thing that they saw
was the GIs coming out of the woods,
was the GIs coming out of the woods,
because before that, there were prisoners, criminals, it was just bedlam.
because before that there were prisoners and criminals and it was just bedlam.
Yeah, well, the German people, sometimes we slept on the ground. But when we got in Germany, some little towns, we'd sometimes take houses to sleep in houses some nights. And we make the men get out. Sometimes we'd go to the burgomaster and he would give us so many houses, tell them to move. Or if he didn't, we could say, "Raus mein Haus," means get out of the house, get out of the house. And we'd let the men get out and leave the mother there. I know in one case, toward the end of the war, we got in fine, and we hadn't had chicken in a while. Took a bayonet and threw a hen, and we were in a barn. I said, I parboiled that hen and cooked her because she's tough. I made gravy, milked the cow, and got some milk. Old cow in the barn. Went over to the woman, she gave me flour, we made gravy and whatnot, and she would cook for us. And we'd gather some eggs during the day. One day, she was cooking eggs for us, and I had an old red-headed guy had been toting a machine gun. He ate 12 eggs at one time. She got to laughing about it. But I found the people out kind of the rural area farmers were good people. They're they're very helpful. And you have to remember this. You're going through the country, they keep the cows around the house, and they got pastures they care about to pasture during the day, and then bring them back at night. Well, you'll be out here shooting around. Here comes a farmer bringing his cows back into the barn tonight, or taking them out. Or you'll see 30 sheep cross the road down here. Sometimes you're out there shooting around and hear some boys playing ball over here. It's hard to believe that's going on. And war going on, people shooting all the time toward the end of the war. But people out in the rural area, they were very appreciative for us being there. Then you have this. When you're going through little towns, they know you're coming. The burgomaster would come out with a flag, say, "We give up, no shooting." If it didn't come out with a flag, you shoot a mortar round, artillery rounds, hit something, then he'd bring out a flag. Because you had the Nazi would be in there, and they wouldn't let them return. They were supposed to fight to the end, and they'd shoot anybody that back off and wouldn't fight. But if a Nazi was there, they couldn't do it. But you'd have to then shoot the town, and then they surrender.
Any other final questions? Yes, sir.
When you all came out to the concentration camp and liberated it,
when you came up to a concentration camp and liberated it,
You said
When about it?
you weren't sure it was there, so
you didn't know that it was there when you came up on it.
No, we didn't
and-
ever know. We didn't know.
you had to leave to march on to fight. Who took care of the people
It was all new to us.
So,
after you left?
so after you left, because you had to march on to continue the fight, who
Yeah.
came after
Yeah,
you
we-
to take care of the people?
We go ahead and then left another country to clean it up and man it.
They left another company would follow them for the cleanup and et cetera. Is that clear?
I just didn't know how they knew to come after you.
Of course, you know that that's just one of many. Auschwitz over in Poland, they had, they did away with about thousands of people, and they had about 15 concentration camps all over Germany. This one is just one of the small ones. It was small compared to what most of them had.
Yes, sir, Mike.
After you left the area of Gunskirchen and continued east, did any of your unit ever link up with the Russian army?
After you left the concentration camp and continued east, did any of your unit ever link up with the Russian army?
We got down near Star, Austria, and the Russians was on the other side of the river. I didn't speak to any, but we met them there and talked to some of them across. Got pictures of them meeting down near Star.
Okay, Courtney, we'll let you have the last question.
I was just going to share that on the table over here, there is a map that shows the route that his company took from where they started to where they ended. And so to kind of answer your question, you can see how the deployments went across the region for who followed who and how they got from where they started to where he finished his time in service that last year. So it's quite a trek, but it's all here on this map.
She's telling what's on your table that they can look at after they finish.
Your map.
Look at it where I want to. Anything. Let me tell you this, you're talking about Germans. When we got down to Star, we had a lot of Germans surrendering, whole regiments and divisions. They'd march in, and we had an area like around the river, big old bottoms. They come in and stack their arms, still under their own control, and we finished some rations. All we did was have a machine gun set up around on the hills about them, and there's about 30,000 up there, and they'd set up their kitchens, and they're still under their own army and whatnot. Well, after that, a certain Nazi, they want a Nazi. They gave me one day, they do this. They counted me, gave me 40 trucks, about 20 GI trucks and 20 German trucks, and loaded me down with about 100, 200 prisoners. And my job was to carry them back to Regensburg. In Regensburg, they would analyze them and talk to them and keep the Nazi and let the others go as we can. Well, I started up the road. I had a Jeep and in charge of it. I had about 20 guys. I'd put one on every other truck. He'd ride up the front. And of course, most of them knew where we were going. And we had 20 trucks, so German trust us driving their trucks. Well, German trucks, some of them were still burning charcoal, and they quit running. We tried to keep the charcoal going, they wouldn't go. I pushed 2 trucks over toward the Danube bank, maybe out in the river, and put those guys on the truck with the rest of them. We go through little towns and stop, and be trucks coming out from everywhere. They knew where we was going. Well, we stopped for lunch. We had K-rations. We stopped and we spread out in some trees there, and the Germans too. And my guys even left their guns hanging over the I said, at least carry your gun, will you, boys? Well, anyway, we got them up to Regensburg, turned them over and said, how many you got? I don't know. Well, we headed back overnight. We found a barn with hay in it, so I stopped, and the German trustees and us all got in the barn together and spent the night. Then on back. But each day they'd send a group back up to Regensburg to analyze them and see who the Nazis were. Of course, you have to look under the arm, and we capture them. We'd look under the arm and see if they're a Nazi. And when you captured them, they'd didn't want to be captured. They sometimes they have to take the rifle and kind of touch them with a bayonet to make them move on. But that's it.
Well, I want to thank the two of you. I want to remind you there are these books in the background, and let me tell you about a little insert. This lecture series has three purposes. One is just to spread information about the current state and the history of the United States Armed Forces. Number two is just to give people a chance to get together that are interested in it and give people an opportunity to tell their story. And third is to raise money for nonprofits that are related to the military. So with that third in mind, I knew this would be a big crowd. It'd be an inspiring talk. And so I had the Poinsett Club just make a list, and it's 3 names on it if you're interested in this. If you're interested in something else, fine. But if you want to do something for the Army that liberated this concentration camp, the first address and website is for the Army Emergency Relief, which is the official nonprofit of the United States Army that helps service members all over the world. If you want to do something more local, there's the name and the website of Upstate Warrior Solution that covers the entire upstate of South Carolina and has, since its founding, helped around 12,000 veterans with all kinds of situations. And if you want to go in a different direction, the third name on here is the name and website and mailing address of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which is the official United States of America Memorial Museum for the Holocaust. And if you wanted to make a gift there, you may do so. And I just would like to say to you, Captain, I have to call him Captain because I was a lieutenant, he outranks me. Captain, I do want to say there was, many of you are familiar with Elie Wiesel. He was an American citizen born in Romania who survived both Auschwitz and Buchenwald, wrote, 40 or 50 books on the subject, the most well-known of which is Night, N-I-G-H-T, about his experiences. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for all the work that he did for just human rights and peace in the world. And he made a speech. When I was looking at his bio, because it was referred to in some of the materials that I reviewed, he made a talk in the 1980s in Europe to a group of World War II American World War II veterans from World War II. And he said to them that when you rescue a people who are being killed, you don't rescue that people, that group of people, you rescue mankind. And he thanked everybody there for liberating and for saving mankind. And so, Captain, I'd like to say to you that you have the thanks of Elie Wiesel for what you did for liberating mankind from that tyranny. You have the thanks of this entire group for liberating mankind and for what you did. And I'd like you just to join me in thanking him for what he did.